So what if I told you there was a natural compound, something you can find in everyday foods like spinach and broccoli that could actually act as a shield against some of the most toxic things we're exposed to?
Look, it's a pretty uncomfortable truth about modern life, right? Certain toxic elements are just unavoidable. They're a part of our environment. And they're not just out there. They're actively getting inside our bodies.
And we're not talking about minor stuff. We're talking about some serious heavy hitters, all covered in the source material for this explainer. Aluminum, arsenic, lead, mercury, and cadmium. We're going to take a closer look at a few of these case files to see the evidence for ourselves.
Now, these elements are really tough for our bodies to get rid of, so they can bioaccumulate. That just means they build up in our tissues over time. So the real question is, what are they actually doing once they get in there? Well, this is how they launch their attack.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going right down to the microscopic level to really understand how this damage happens.
What's so wild about this diagram is how it just visualizes the chaos. You can literally see how these metals mess with our normal cell functions, setting off this devastating chain reaction that damages the very core of who we are, our DNA.
The main bad guys in this whole attack are called reactive oxygen species, or ROS for short. The best way to think of them is like cellular rust. These tiny, out-of-control sparks just ricocheting around inside our cells, wrecking everything they touch. And this whole destructive process, it has a name: oxidative stress.
But what if nature already had a kind of built-in defense system against this rust? Let's meet our potential hero, a natural defender called alpha-lipoic acid, or ALA. So what is this stuff exactly? Well, ALA is a natural antioxidant that our own bodies make in our mitochondria, the powerhouses of our cells. We also get it from foods like spinach, broccoli, and red meat. But here's what's absolutely crucial, according to the research. It's one of the very few antioxidants that can get past the super protective blood-brain barrier. That's a huge deal. And this diagram from the source review just lays it all out beautifully. It shows ALA at work inside a cell. You can see it taking on those ROS sparks, sure, but it's also shown interacting directly with the toxic metals. It's like a double threat defender. This is the key takeaway. ALA basically has two distinct superpowers. First, it's an antioxidant. Think of it as a shield. It goes in and directly neutralizes those harmful cellular sparks we talked about. But second, it's also a chelator, which is like a magnet. It literally grabs onto the toxic metals, binding to them so the body can safely get them out of there. Okay, so that's the theory. Sounds great, right? But what does the science actually say? Let's get into the evidence.
All right, let's open up the first case file from the scientific review: aluminum. This stuff is in everything from some food additives to our cookware, and it's a known neurotoxicant, which just means it's toxic to our nervous system.
And the research here is pretty compelling. The review pulls together studies that show ALA helps undo damage caused by aluminum. It lowers that cellular rust, that oxidative stress, and in animal studies, it even helped preserve brain structure and spatial memory.
And the researchers don't mince words. Quoting directly from the review, ALA supplementation significantly enhances cellular defense mechanisms and antioxidant enzyme activity. It's about as clear as it gets.
Next up, case file: arsenic. The source points out that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency actually ranks this as the #1 pollutant, and it often shows up in contaminated groundwater.
Against arsenic, the evidence is just as powerful. ALA was found to restore our critical antioxidant levels, actually lower the amount of arsenic in the brain, and protect our vital organs, like the liver, kidneys, and heart, from taking a hit.
One of the cited studies wrapped it up so directly. ALA successfully prevented arsenic's cytotoxic effects. And cytotoxic, that literally just means toxic to living cells. So ALA stopped it in its tracks. Okay, our final case file: cadmium. This is another one of those widespread environmental metals. You find it in food, cigarette smoke, and industrial pollution. And it's known to build up in the liver and kidneys.
And the results here are pretty staggering. The review highlights studies where ALA protected kidneys from getting injured, it lessened toxicity in the liver, and once again, it lowered that dangerous oxidative stress. But just look at that first point for a second.
Because it leads right to this incredible quote from the paper, talking about acute cadmium poisoning in an animal study. ALA decreased the mortality brought on by acute cadmium intoxication. I mean, in that context, it was literally a lifesaver.
So, we've seen the attack, we've met the defender, and we've looked at the evidence.
Let's pull this all together and see what it means. The promise and path forward.
The review's main takeaway is definitely optimistic. To quote their conclusion directly, overall, ALA emerges as a promising alternative for alleviating metal toxicity.
But, and this is important, we have to see the whole picture. The promise is clear. We have a natural compound here with a powerful 1-2 punch defense. But here's the reality check, also from the paper. Its effectiveness isn't universal. For instance, the researchers note it's less effective against lead than some standard treatments, and its ability to reduce mercury is limited. So, it's a powerful tool, for sure, but it's not a magic bullet for every single metal out there.
So in the end, the research reveals this incredibly potent molecule, something that occurs in nature, with this remarkable ability to defend ourselves from these invisible threats. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In a world where we're exposed to more and more toxins, what other natural shields like this are just waiting to be discovered?